This happened over the summer of 2014, when I was 12 years old. I lived in Texas, but this happened in Louisiana, when me and my family were visiting relatives from my mother's side of the family. We stayed at our grandmother's old lake house, which was right by her actual house. It was late, maybe midnight, and I was in bed next to my brother, who at the time was 10. All of a sudden, I hear a knock on the door. Our room was the closest to the door, and each door was made out of glass. I know my grandfather was very rich. He had 4 houses in each city like Louisiana, including his former office, that he placed upstairs. He had 4 houses in each city of Louisiana, including his former office that he placed upstairs, so that we could sleep like it was a hotel room. As I got up, I opened the bedroom door. I proceeded with caution into the living room, and then walked up to the front door, where I saw 2 young boys. One was white, and the other African American. They looked to be about 10 or 12, the same age as my brother and I, and they wore hoodies. I stared at them for a few moments, cautious as to why 2 kids our age would be knocking on the door in the middle of the night. The elder of the 2 spoke up, and the other was nervously looking around. The kid had the voice of a young man. He had light brown hair and said, "Howdy, partner. You look nice. Could you let us in? We got lost at a party. Could you let us in so that we could call our mum?" I was gonna, but I was afraid I'd get in trouble for letting in strangers in past dark. But then I thought that they were just kids around mine and my brother's age. But then I thought about something else. Something that I had learnt in 3rd grade, about how some strangers use kids to help kidnap other kids. So I stopped myself. I wanted to call for my parents, but it felt like someone was controlling me and making me not to. "Don't call for your parents, buddy. Just let us in." He literally read my mind. It was only about 5 seconds after that I got a proper good look at their eyes, which were solid black. No pupil, no iris, just solid black. They were not human. The elder one spoke up again. "Come on, James. I can only come in if you let me in." I nearly jumped. How did he know my name? So what was he, some kind of creature? How the hell did he know that? Then suddenly, the younger of the 2 boys spoke for the first time. "Please, dude. We're lost and scared." I tried running back to bed, but it felt like my feet were nailed to the floor. "Please, can we come in?" After about 5 attempts, I was finally able to move and run away to my nice, cozy bed. I could still hear them tapping on the door and saying to let us in. I eventually fell asleep and woke up next morning and decided to make my way downstairs in order to investigate. Had it all been a dream, or was it real? I opened the door and saw nothing. Obviously the kids were no longer here. But just before I fully closed the door, did something small catch my eye. A scrunched up piece of paper on the ground. I opened it up, and it read, "You're very smart, James." I recently revisited the place 2 times after, because we had to for family vacation, but I don't plan to again. This happened about 3 months ago. I was driving along the road with my girlfriend. It was about 9 or 10 p.m. at night, and very cold. We had just pulled onto a parking to buy a few groceries in a market, and some girl came up to us before we got out of the car. She wasn't much older than 13 years old, had pigtails and a baby pink dress. She seemed harmless. Both of us felt low-key threatened and scared by her though. It was dark, so we didn't notice right away that the thing that stood out the most from her was the eyes. They were pitch black. Just looking at them made me feel dizzy and scared. We were in the car when the girl asked, "Let me in and take me home." It's a child, but with black eyes. And I mean, I'm obviously not going to do that. I locked my side of the door, and my girlfriend felt a little bit upset and asked me to let her in. The girl ran to my girlfriend's side of the car just as I was locking her side of the doors too. She started to slam on the windows and yell to let her in, and I quickly started the car and we drove off freaking out. When we turned around, the girl was going to the next driver that just parked the car. We didn't do or say anything. We just drove back home. I immediately checked everything, and we found out that children with black eyes are an actual thing. So friends, if a child who has black eyes ever tries to talk to you or comes near you, you just don't look back. Who knows what could happen? I am a 911 operator. We get a lot of outlandish calls, but there's one that stands out. I received a call late one night from a home invasion in progress. The woman was freaking out because two men, a tall lanky man with a wrench and a short fat man with a hammer, had let themselves into her apartment as she had forgotten to lock the door, and woke her up by banging on the walls in her living room. When she went to investigate, the men claimed to be members of the apartment staff on call to fix her air conditioning unit. She told them she had made no such call and asked them to leave at once. The men insisted and dove behind her and behind her couch and armchair, where they remained silent, their bald heads occasionally peeking out of the corners of the furniture. When the 911 call came in, my caller was frantic as she described the scene, constantly interrupting herself to shriek and plead with the two men, demanding that they leave and that the police were on their way. I remained on the line with her as my officers went en route so that I could update them on developers. However, my caller continued only to describe their bald heads, rasping breath, and abnormally large black eyes tracing around her room. Roughly 5 minutes into the call, things changed. My caller said that the men had ducked down completely behind the furniture, and she could no longer see them. I advised my caller to remain where she was and not to search for the intruders, as she informed me that she was intending to, and the officers were just pulling into her apartment block. I heard a knock at her door as my officers entered, and oddly enough, I began to hear a dog barking through my headset. Clearly, in cases such as home invasion, a dog present will be barking constantly, and it only begins as my officers entered the home. I muted my voice and remained on the line as my officers cleared the apartment. All the while, the woman desperately described to the officers that the men must have sunken back down through the shadows on the floor, as they usually do when they're about to be caught. My officers concluded after a full sweep of the apartment that everything was clear, and that the woman had mistaken her furniture, a love seat, the short fat man, and a high-backed chair, the tall slender man, as the intruders. We currently have the residents flagged, but I'll never be able to shake her description of the two intruders staring at her with those black eyes.